Hello, everybody. Sean Davis here for the Raptors Nation, your home for everything Raptors, with your first Raptors Nation podcast. That's right. If you haven't heard, or if you didn't watch our most recent video on the Raptors Nation YouTube channel, which I highly suggest you should recommend, we are starting the Raptors Nation podcast. And I said we, not me, because we have a co-host for the show working with me, Luca Rosano. Yeah, get that right, Luca. How you doing, man? Glad to have you on.
Yeah, no, it's great, Sean. A long time coming. Trevor obviously had this idea a couple months ago, and it's nice to have it come to fruition. A Raptors-based podcast, which is a little bit of a longer form show compared to some of the other YouTube content that's out there. And we're going to be talking about some of the biggest Raptors topics from the week that was. Obviously, for this month and September, it's going to be a little bit quiet, but we still got a lot to talk about for this show and the shows to come. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited to work with you. Obviously, familiar with your work from Lakers Nation, and I know you are a very big basketball mind when it comes to every team, especially the Toronto Raptors. I mean, is it safe to say outside of the Lakers, you follow the Raptors the second most, if not one of the most teams around the association?
Yeah, I think I have to now. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. No, yeah, I'm also really excited to get to work with you as well. So how this will work is every Tuesday morning and every Thursday morning, you'll have
Yeah.
a fresh new Raptors Nation podcast in your podcast feed. So do us a quick favor and go wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast. Go head over and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating review as well. That was the easiest way to help us out. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So let's dive in here to talk about the Toronto Raptors and their offseason. Luca, what would you say has been? I mean, it's been a pretty busy one, I'd say. What would you say has been your highlight from the Raptors offseason thus far?
So it's kind of going to be a two in one answer here, but I'm going to say a couple of re-signings that happened at the very start of the offseason once NBA free agency officially started. And I'm talking about the Raptors bringing back Chris Boucher and Thaddeus Young. And let's first start with the Chris Boucher re-signing. Raptors bringing them back on a 3-year, $35.25 million deal. And I'll be honest, Sean, I thought Chris Boucher would not be a Raptor going into this season just because there were a lot of potential suitors that were interested in Chris Boucher's services, and rightfully so. I mean, you look at Boucher's body of work, it speaks for itself. But the Raptors management, they did want to bring Chris Boucher back, and that's exactly what they did. And you look at Chris Boucher, I mean, he wasn't even that confident in himself getting this contract because he did start the season a little bit shaky. And he actually did say, I have a quote here, I just thought they would either not play me and I'd be done at the end of the year. So Boucher thought at one point in time that his days with the Raptors were outnumbered. But then I would say in the new year, he really turned it around. He was still able to get 10 double doubles, and he was really able to contribute to this Raptors team, providing some scoring punch from off the bench, some rim protection. And he was just that energetic, contagious energy from off the bench. He became that hustle guy that really sparked up that second unit. And Chris Boucher, I know overall he had a bit of a off season from the year prior, but he's still a guy who's capable of putting up some six man of the year type numbers. I mean, in 2020, 2021, he was a six man of the year candidate while he averaged career highs 13.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks. So I really think Boucher could be that sixth or seventh man from off the bench this season for the Raps. And then the other highlight, like I said, it's going to be a 2-in-1 answer. Thad Young, another big re-signing for the Toronto Raptors. They brought back Thad Young after they traded for him mid-season, giving up Goran Dragic. And Thad Young was another set to be hot commodity on the market. The Celtics, the Raptors' bitter rivals, said to have a lot of interest in Thad Young, and that would have pissed me off if Thad Young went to the Celtics. So it was nice that the Raptors were able to retain his services. He averaged 6.3 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 1.7 assists per game with the Raptors, and he really stabilized that bench while providing that veteran glue guy type leadership for the Raptors on and off the court. And I think it's that veteran leadership that is really going to show itself throughout the course of a full season with this Raptors team. So those two re-signings, big for the Raptors second unit. And those are my highlights.
Well, you went two, so I'll go with two as well. I'll go with a signing and a player not being traded. But first, I honestly didn't think they were going to re-sign Thad Young. So being able to bring him back as well, I thought that was a huge positive. And Chris Boucher, I've talked about in the past as well that if the Raptors wanted to keep him around, it was a very easy way to do that. They had his bird rights and they were able to retain him. So I do like them getting that done. For me, I'm gonna start off with the signing Otto Porter Jr. This is such like a Nick Nurse pick. Like, just give me all the wings, all the size, all the shooting. I want it all. I'm not gonna lie, I really wanted Otto Porter Jr. for the Lakers, as you brought up the Lakers a bit earlier. But you're talking about a guy that, when healthy, was I think a big part of that Warriors team, that second unit, who started a bit as well, who has the 3-point shooting, who is a smart player. Not necessarily some defensive guru or whatever, but it's definitely no slouch defensively. But coming from Golden State, where you have to be a smart basketball player, to Nick Nurse, so you have to be a smart basketball player, it's just a perfect fit. And then not trading away Precious Achiuwa
Yeah.
and not doing like a Rudy Gobert deal, which I saw a lot of Raptors fans for some reason saying, let's go get Rudy, which I so vigorously, I guess is the word, did not want them to do that. I like Precious Achiuwa a lot, man. I think it was
Same.
post All-Star break where he was shooting like 40% from three or something ridiculous along those lines. I vividly remember the Philly game at home towards the end of the season. Precious gets a rebound. He comes down the court, handling the ball, comes down the court, pulls from 30 feet and drills it. How many bigs are doing that? Precious, and also he's a really good defender that can hang down low. I thought he did a really good job, or as good of a job as he could, guarding Joel Embiid in that first round series against the Sixers.
Yeah.
So yeah, not trading away Precious, not panicking like, oh crap, we gotta go do something, and signing out of Porter Jr. Those are probably my two biggest ones.
Yeah, just to piggyback from what you just said. So the first, Otto Porter Jr., I love that signing too. You talk about a guy in Otto Porter Jr., he was a key role player for the Warriors championship run. He's a guy that is going to be able to hit those open shots when needed. And that's something the Raptors really needed, especially in that first round playoff series against the Sixers. And speaking of guys that were able to hit some shots, Precious Achiuwa, man, like he really solidified himself as a guy. Like you said, he was able to create off the dribble. He was able to, shoot threes. I mean, this was a guy that only had one 3-pointer attempt from a season ago, and he made himself a 3-point shooter this season with the Raptors. He had like 8 3-pointers in one game against Philadelphia. It was crazy, hitting the corner three. So I think he's only going to get better. And he is such a versatile player. And I think he's only, the sky's the limit to how good he could be. And then we haven't even talked about his ability on the defensive end as well. So, I'm really glad the Raptors did not part ways with Precious. And I agree, especially looking at what the T-Wolves had to give up for Rudy Gobert. I mean, that's way too much. And I definitely don't want to see the Raptors give up that big of a package, especially when it comes to the picks for somebody like Rudy Gobert.
Out of curiosity, I'm only bringing this up. This is not planned, but I'm only bringing this up because you touched on it just a little bit. What went wrong in that series against Philly, in your eyes?
Well, I think the obvious was just health. Like, if the
Yeah.
Raptors were healthy from start to finish during that series, they probably win that series. Like Scotty Barnes, he has the scare. He obviously missed some time. Gary Trent Jr. wasn't feeling well. Fred VanVleet had to miss the last 2 games, and that's literally a good chunk of the Raptors team. I mean, you're talking about 3 key starters and 3 guys that are going to give you some much needed production. If the Raptors were healthy, Sean, I think they really would have pushed the Sixers to the brink, and I would have had the Raptors winning that series. And I did have the Raptors winning that series. But you talk about how it started with the scare to Scotty. He gets injured. And then you really just felt the team was a little bit demoralized. I mean, they go down 3-0. Everybody's thinking it's going
And
to be a
Freddie just
sweep.
never looked right.
But then they battle back. Yeah, exactly. Like, I just feel like once the way the series started, they fall down 0-3. They look demoralized, and they never really found their true footing in that series. But credit to them, they were able to make it a series, forcing that game 6. But then in that game 6, they couldn't hit a damn shot. And that's going back to the Raptors needing a guy who could hit some shots. And hopefully Otto Porter Jr., plays a big role in that for this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think schematically, which was really just mind-boggling, but I get it because the Harden and Embiid effect. They were helping way too much off of like the shoot. Like Tyrese Maxey killed them. Those first
Yeah,
couple
especially games
games,
1 and 2.
game 1 and 2, Tyrese killed them. And I mean, granted, Nick made the adjustments. Like he didn't really feel Tyrese Maxey the last 4 games of the series. But man, games 1 and 2, Maxey pretty much won those. Like if Harden had not been there, he might have won those games by himself. So that's probably the biggest one. And we've talked about that. Like I messaged you after it happened. Game 3, that's not Nick Nurse's fault at the end. The shot. Right? We
No,
agree? Okay.
no, yeah, no. I know a lot of people were blaming Nick Nurse. I mean, Joel Embiid, man, he just had that. I guess he had that luck of element on his side after suffering at the fate of the Toronto Raptors in 2019. He got his revenge. He got his moment, and yeah, that was a really good shot by him. So yeah, for everybody who was kind of coming at Nick Nurse in that moment, that was uncalled for.
Go check out a just cheap plug here. Go check out the film breakdown from Game 3 of that series, and I show that it's not Nick Nurse's fault. If anything, Nick Nurse did the correct thing. But let's move on, talking more about the present. And man, it is absolutely nuts in the NBA right now. Kevin Durant and the Nets are going through the roughest of rough divorces. Any celebrity divorce you could think of, that's what's going on between KD and the Nets. So much so that Joe Tsai has publicly called Kevin Durant out without calling him out, without saying his name. He's went as far as calling him out as you can, basically saying, if you haven't been keeping up with it, KD has said basically, hey, it's me or Sean Marks or Steve Nash. That report comes out, I think, from Shams. Correct me if I'm wrong, Luca.
Yeah.
And then about an hour or two later, Joe Tsai personally tweets out, basically saying, hey, you know what? I'm siding with Sean Marks and Steve Nash to help my team. Kevin Durant, how does this all affect the Raptors? It's kind of a two-part question, so let's start off with that one. How does this affect the Raptors?
Yeah, I just want to say this to start. I mean, this whole Kevin Durant thing, man, it's getting crazier by the minute. And then I saw something a couple hours ago that apparently I'm getting off the Raptors line of talking right now for a second. Apparently, when they were negotiating with the Boston Celtics, they wanted Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. I'm talking about the Brooklyn Nets for
I just
KD.
saw
So
that
the
too.
the
Yeah.
Brooklyn Nets are just downright delusional. And I think that's how this impacts and affects the Raptors because I think truly the Brooklyn Nets, their asking price is way too high to a point where teams are not going to budge, including the Toronto Raptors, and they're going to be forced to run it back with two disgruntled superstars in KD and Kyrie. I really don't see a team stepping up to the plate that is going to give the Nets what they truly want, especially after hearing some of the requests the Brooklyn Nets have made. And looking at the Toronto Raptors, they're obviously not giving up Scotty Barnes, and that is the correct call, in my opinion. I mean, I've been on the side of not trading Scotty Barnes from the very beginning of this. That would just be downright stupid if the Raptors did that. But even outside of that, like, are the Raptors going to put together a trade package that the Brooklyn Nets want? I mean, I think you mentioned it on Twitter that right now the Nets' best trade option would be a Pascal Siakam trade package. And that is something that you said would be one of the best,
Would you
offers
do
out there.
that?
Sorry?
Like Pascal and Gary trying to few in some picks. Would you do that if you're Masai?
Well, I've always said this, Sean. I'm basically anybody but Scotty Barnes. If Masai
Okay.
Ujiri can pull this off without trading away Scotty Barnes, I would do it. But if the Brooklyn Nets are adamant that they want Scotty, like, I'm okay going into this season without Kevin Durant, especially after the latest that KD's just become this drama-filled superstar. So I would do something outside of Scotty Barnes. So like, is that going to happen? I don't think so, because again, I think the Brooklyn Nets really want the most in return, and they're not going to just trade Kevin Durant away until they get that historic haul. So my personal opinion on this whole thing, Sean, is the Raptors aren't going to get a deal done here. I don't think the Celtics are going to get a deal done here. I really think the Brooklyn Nets are going to start the season with KD, and I think conversations could come to the surface again closer to the trade deadline. But Yeah, I just don't see anything brewing as of right now. I mean, if I had to pick one team, maybe the Celtics, just because Brad Stevens is aggressive, but I don't see it as of right now.
All right. So I apologize in ahead of time if I do go on a little rant here. I do actually think it's going to happen at some point
So you do think it's
this
going to
off
happen?
season before training camp.
Okay.
Although I absolutely disagree with the way Kevin Durant has handled this whole situation. If he really wants out, he's low key smart because now this has gone so bad. If I'm opposing GMs, I'm not trying to push for anything right now because right now you could still probably argue Brooklyn, they don't have to do anything right now. They could just run it back, and that's the mindset of Brooklyn. But like if it gets closer to September and it gets closer to training camp and you're opposing GMs, so like, hey, guess what? This has gotten really, really bad. You basically, I mean, not incorrectly, but you're saying you're going to go with your coach and your GM over your player. Also, by the way, this ultimatum is just ridiculous. And I think
Yeah.
that's the whole point. Because KD's saying, hey, either you do something ridiculous and stupid that none of the other 29 teams would do, or trade me. So now his value is going to, I think, his value is going to start plummeting
Yeah.
eventually. And maybe not to the point where if it's 7 first round picks, it's 4. So I do think somebody's going to step up to the plate and offer that and give Brooklyn the 4 picks or whatever, which segues into my point, into my next or my second question. If they're both on the table, Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell, if I'm Masai, I'm rather trading for Donovan Mitchell than Kevin Durant. Do you agree with that, or you say if you have your pick, you're still going Kevin Durant?
Ooh, that's interesting. If I had my pick, I'm still going Kevin Durant only because I think he moves the needle more. And if you are able to get Kevin Durant and you still got guys like Fred VanVleet, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, that team in my eyes is good enough to get out of the East. Whereas Donovan Mitchell, he's a great player, but we've seen that he can't necessarily be that guy in the playoffs. And I know people are going to say the same about Kevin Durant. I mean, he had to join a 73 win team before he found success, but KD is still KD. We've seen the big performances he's had. He can be very clutch down the stretch. And if the Warriors didn't have KD, in my opinion, they wouldn't have beaten LeBron James and the Cavs in that
No,
NBA final. So I'd
no.
rather, if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather the Raptors go after KD than Donovan Mitchell. But even Donovan Mitchell, I mean, they were saying that his haul is expected to be something like
Which
what, like close to 6 first round picks. Like it's
close to
crazy now.
6.
I really
Yeah.
think that Rudy Gobert trade, Sean, just made other teams ultra delusional of what they could get back for a star, superstar type player. We're talking about Rudy Gobert getting that in return. So no wonder Kevin Durant trade talks have consisted of the Nets asking for the kitchen sink and then some. Like it's ridiculous. So that is why I think we won't see a blockbuster trade happen for the remainder of this offseason and summer going into the season.
That's why I think I'm hoping. I think the rest of the NBA is kind of hoping as well that a KD trade happens and that his value actually is plummeting a little bit. Because then, like, let's say KD goes for 4 first round picks instead of the whatever amount that Rudy Gobert went for. It was stupid. Then hopefully opposing GMs or rival GMs like, oh, okay, Minnesota is just stupid. This, even though he did destroy his value a little bit, this is the appropriate value of a legit superstar, not a good player. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go into slander Rudy Gobert, but this is
Yeah.
the appropriate value. So then, if Danny Ainge, granted, you could also say Utah really doesn't have to trade Donovan Mitchell, which is fair. But my whole argument for that is like, honestly, I think another guard playmaker slash scorer is more of a sneaky need than another wing that can score. I don't think you need that because you have Scotty, you have Pascal. Granted, you likely be replacing Pascal with Kevin Durant, so that's the easy swap there. You have OG too. Like, I just don't think you need another wing that can score and not really create or facilitate. Not saying Donovan Mitchell is this great playmaker, but he'll help. And like the biggest thing, I'm honestly surprised. I don't know about you, Luca. I'm honestly surprised the Raptors didn't really go get another guard in either free agency or the draft. Because the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, man, I don't know how you watched last season say, yeah,
Yeah.
let's not get Freddie any help because
Yeah.
everything ran through Freddie. He was initiating the offense. He was still asked to score and spot up shoot at times as well. I think Donovan Mitchell would just help take some of the burden off of Fred VanVleet so that he's not just burned out and gassed in the playoffs. Because, like I said at the top, Luca, I don't think Freddie looked like himself that entire playoff series because he was being asked to play 40 minutes a night
Yeah.
in November.
Yeah, he had one of the highest minutes per game in the league, and that eventually caught up to him. And I agree with you, Sean. I did expect the Raptors to address getting Fred VanVleet some other help, but I think that's going to go into their vision and having high hopes for guys like Delano Banton and
Mm-hmm.
Malachi Flynn. This could be his last hurrah. This could be his last chance to really prove that he could be that capable backup point guard. And then Jeff Dowden Jr., if given opportunities, he really played well at Summer League. So there are a couple of intriguing options the Raptors could put in that backup role for Fred VanVleet. Or, I mean, the Raptors wouldn't want to do this route because you don't want to further burn other guys. But we've seen last season a guy like Scotty Barnes or Siakam running the point as kind of that point forward. So there are a couple of different options the Raptors could take to alleviate some of that pressure off VanVleet. But I agree, somebody's going to have to step up to the plate and give Fred some much needed rest because there's no way Fred VanVleet can be expected to play 40 plus minutes and the Raptors are going to be successful in the long haul. They definitely need to save up Freddie or else he's going to burn himself out once again.
Let's wrap things up here with some expectations for this upcoming season. Let's just go with the assumption that you don't make any big moves. This is your roster going to training camp at the start of the season, and Brooklyn stays as is. They can't trade Kevin Durant, although we differ on that. They can't trade Kevin Durant, which means they don't trade Kyrie Irving. What are your expectations for the Raptors heading into the season?
I wanted to ask you one quick question, Sean, just going back to our last segment. This is going to be very quick. I just want to get your thoughts on this. So, Bobby Marks, just talking about trade talks and things being realistic, he had a hypothetical trade and he thought this would be one of the best offers for the Nets. So, Kevin
Is it
Durant,
OG and Gary?
OG, Gary Trent Jr., Thad Young, and 4 first-round picks. Now, do you think the Nets would do that?
Has Katie's value? I think Katie's value is gonna fall, but man, no way it's falling that far. Like, if I'm
Yeah.
Sean Marks and you're telling me no for Scotty, I'm at least asking for Pascal.
That's exactly my reasoning. So I was actually quite surprised when I saw that hypothetical from Bobby Marks because I'm like, is this coming to fruition? Like all the chatter we're making online, obviously trade proposals by Raptors fans are always going to be lenient and you don't want to give up star players because you would like to keep as much as you can. But
Right.
man, to somehow be able to get KD for that would be one of the biggest fleeces in NBA
That's a
history.
please. Yeah.
Like that's crazy. And I was quite surprised when I did see that because I'm on the same boat as you, Sean. Like if you're not giving up Scotty Barnes, that's already a known thing. I would think you would at least have to give up Siakam. So but who knows, man, because Masai Ujiri, he is the master of the fleece. He is the master of the trade. So that would be wild. I just wanted to bring that up because I did see it on Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that too. I honestly scrolled by it because I was like, no way. Yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, again, if that's what it takes, and sure, you had a really, really big lineup. Now I'm thinking about like, is Scotty your 2?
Raptors are winning the championship by default if they're able to keep Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Fred
And
VanVleet.
Fred VanVleet.
Oh man, that would instantly be a championship team. But going to your question here, expectations for the Raptors this season. So NBA.com actually listed the Raptors as the 5th ranked team in the East. So they're actually showing the Raptors some respect, thinking the Raptors are going to finish what they finished a season ago. I'm just going to read the
Who's
list
above
here.
them? Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go down the list. So Celtics 1, Bucks 2, Sixers 3, Heat 4, Raptors 5, Bulls 6, Nets 7, Hawks 8, Cavs 9, Knicks 10, Wizards 11, Hornets 12, Pistons 13, Magic 14, Pacers 15. So the thing that jumps up to me is, the Nets, you don't know what's going to happen with the Nets, assuming they are all coming back. You don't know if we could see something similar to the Ben Simmons situation where you got guys holding out. So that's why, like, it's really hard to rank the Nets. But going to the Raptors ranking here, I think it's quite fair. And I agree with this. And I would even go as far as saying I can see the Raptors being a top 4 team this season, Sean. I could see the Raptors leapfrogging the Sixers or even the Heat and getting to that fourth spot. So I would say the Raptors finish either fourth or fifth. You look at the Heat, they lost PJ Tucker, who is a big component of that team. And the Heat, in my opinion, they had overall a pretty disappointing offseason. They didn't really go out and get another player that can help them and really establish them as a championship contender. And the Raptors did have a lot of success against the Miami Heat last season. I think Philadelphia is one of those teams that, I mean, they're going to be good this season, don't get me wrong, but are they going to be a team that's going to necessarily care about the regular season? I think the Raptors could potentially leapfrog one of those teams, but I think it's safe to say the top two teams are going to be the Celtics and Bucks if both those teams are healthy. So overall, yeah, I think this is a very fair ranking, and I would have had the Raptors fourth or fifth anyway before even seeing this thing. So what about you? Do you think it's fair, or where are you going with this one?
No, I think it's fair. I was making weird faces because I think everything after Toronto is just bad, honestly.
Yeah.
The Pacers being dead last is what really is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to make the playoffs. I'd be stunned if they did, but they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a tough out every single night. Carlisle's still a really good coach. They got some talent over there, man. Like, they're going to be tough. Brooklyn, again, they're this massive question mark, so them being seventh is fine.
Yeah.
Miami's just a massive to be determined. Like, it feels
Yeah.
like their roster is just like incomplete. So they're just a massive TBD.
Yeah.
And then Philly, I think Philly are still frauds. Philly does not scare me one bit, honestly. So I think the
Yeah.
ceiling for this team is probably a 3 seed. Like if things went well, Scotty takes that next step that we all think he will. You give Fred some daggone help. OG continues to develop and play well. Same with Gary Trent, who is still like only like 23, maybe even 24 now. They're both insanely young. Precious keeps adding blocks to what's been a really solid last season, transitioning that to a full season of playing high-level basketball. Also, another thing that I think we should mention is this team is way deeper than last year's team, man. Like, we might actually see a 9-10-man rotation from Nick Nurse, which seems like he has not wanted to do in the past year or so. But, they actually have some depth, man, like depth. Otto Porter Jr., we talked about. You brought back Thad Young, Chris Boucher, Malachi Flynn, you
Your
touched on a
bench
little
is
bit
looking
earlier.
nice. It really
Your
is.
bench, yeah, it's looking like Walker Kessler. No, Christian Coloco. Did I get that right? Yeah. I almost said Walker Kessler. That was going back to that awful Rudy Gobert trade. So no, man, I think ceiling's a 3 seed. I think this is a playoff team almost regardless. I think they're talented enough that even if it's a bad season, they'll fall backwards into the playoffs. I just think this team is really talented. And they're too well coached, man. So I don't even think you're going to see a quote-unquote bad season. I'm just kind of irritated now because that list is awful. I'm sorry, after number 5.
Yeah, I think the biggest wild card is going to be the Nets because, of course, you're not going to know which version of the Nets you're going to get. I think the Cavs could be a lot higher, too, on this list. I'm very high on the Cavs. I think they could take that next step as well. But going back to the Raptors, yeah, you bring up so many good points. Well coached. They really turned it up in the new year. They're finally going to have a capable bench. And they got so many young, intriguing guys that you mentioned, Sean, that can take that next leap, that can really make the Raptors scary good. I'm talking Scotty Barnes, who reportedly has added 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. Gary Trent Jr., who you mentioned, is very young still, and he can continue to get better. He was so good on both sides of the ball. And then Precious, like, I am going to be one of Precious's biggest fans this season because I really think he can be something special for this Raptors team. And he's only going to get better. And I think when it's all said and done, I mean, I already think the Raptors definitely won that sign and trade. But when it's all said and done, Precious is going to be that big prize from that Kyle Lowry sign and trade. Precious Achiuwa, man, don't sleep on him. I think with those guys potentially taking a leap, we were going to get from All-NBA Pascal Siakam, All-Star, and Fred VanVleet. Those guys are going to bring it every single night. Yeah, the Raptors are going to be one of those teams that will be able to beat whoever they play on any given night. And I think having a full season altogether, being healthy, this Raptors team is definitely going to be, at the very worst, I would say, a top 5 team. And like you said, ceiling, that's fair. I could see that being number 3 because I think we can both agree again. Boston, Bucks, those are the top 2 teams. But then after that, it's really a free-for-all.
Yeah, totally. And I will gladly join you in the Precious Achua fan club. I will. You can be the president, but I will gladly join you in that one. Thank you all for tuning into the first episode of the Raptors Nation podcast. So, just a quick favor: if you're watching this on YouTube, please give a like and subscribe here to the Raptors Nation YouTube channel. Ring that post notification bell as well. And if you're listening on podcasting platforms or wherever you listen to your podcast, please do give us a like. Well, you can't do that there, but subscribe. You give us a 5-star rating and review. It's the easiest way to help out the pod. Luca, thanks for joining on, man. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to continue to do this with you, man. Great stuff. And thank you for watching, guys. We'll come out with nonstop podcasts again every Tuesday and Thursday.
Raptors Nation here. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.